Jinho checked his uniform one more time in the mirror. The blue fabric was perfect, every button shined, and his name tag sat straight on his chest. He looked like any other officer in the Earth Defense Fleet, nothing special about him at all. That was exactly how he liked it. "Ready for the big day?" his friend Wu Jin asked from across the small room they shared on the ship. Wu Jin was putting on his own uniform, but his hands shook a little. Everyone was nervous about this mission. "As ready as anyone can be for humanity's first alien meeting," Jinho said. He tried to sound calm, but his stomach felt tight. In 3 hours, they would dock with the Villani Empire's main ship. After months of radio messages back and forth, they were finally going to meet face to face. The UES Harmony was Earth's newest ship, built just for this mission. Ambassador Park Mirai led the team of 12 humans who would make first contact. Jinho was there as the military representative, even though he thought Captain Choi Seokmin would have been a better choice. But the captain had to stay with the ship. "Do you think they'll be friendly?" Wu Jin asked. Jinho shrugged. "Their messages seemed polite enough. They invited us to their ship instead of making us meet on some empty planet. That's got to be a good sign." The two men finished getting dressed and headed to the main meeting room. Ambassador Mirai was already there with the rest of the team. Dr. Kim Hana, their alien culture expert, was reading through her notes one more time. Everyone looked nervous, but excited. "Remember," Ambassador Mirai said to the group, "we represent all of humanity today. Be polite, be respectful, and let me do most of the talking. Commander Jinho will handle any questions about our military, and Dr. Hana will help with cultural issues." Jinho nodded. His job was simple. Stand there, look professional, and answer. Questions about Earth's defenses if they asked. He had memorized all the information he was allowed to share. Nothing too detailed, nothing that could be used against Earth if things went wrong. 2 hours later, the Harmony docked with the Villani ship. Jinho had seen pictures from their long-range scans, but seeing it up close was different. The alien ship was huge, maybe 10 times the size of the Harmony. It was white and silver, with curved lines that made it look more like art than a machine. "Wow," Wu Jin whispered as they looked out the window. "How many people do you think live on that thing?" "The messages said about 50,000, Dr. Hana answered. "It's not just a ship. It's like a flying city." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. On the other side stood 3 tall figures in long, flowing robes. The Villani were even more beautiful than their pictures had shown. They had pale skin that seemed to glow slightly, long silver hair, and eyes that looked like they held stars inside them. Each one was at least 7 feet tall. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the center one said in perfect English. "I am High Counselor Vethis. We are honored by your visit." Ambassador Mirai stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Thank you for receiving us. I am Ambassador Park Mirai, representing the United Earth government." The Villani led them through corridors that took Jinho's breath away. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that caught and reflected light in amazing patterns. Soft music played from somewhere, and the air smelled like flowers. Everything was clean and beautiful in a way that made their own ship seem rough and simple. Other Villani stopped to watch them pass. Some bowed, others just stared with curious eyes. Jinho noticed that all of them were tall and graceful, moving like dancers even when they were just walking. "Your ship is incredible," Dr. Hana said to their guide. "You honor us," High Counselor Vethis replied. "We have had many generations to perfect our craft. Your people are young, but show great promise." They walked for almost 10 minutes before reaching a huge set of doors. The doors were covered in carvings that told some kind of story, with figures that looked like gods or heroes doing great deeds. "Her Majesty Queen Theranel waits beyond," Vethis said. "She is eager to meet the first humans to travel so far from home." The doors opened slowly and Jinho's mouth fell open. The room was enormous, with a ceiling so high he could barely see it. Pillars of crystal held up the roof, and soft light came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, sat a throne made of what looked like solid diamond. On the throne was the most beautiful being Jinho had ever seen. Queen Theranel was even, taller than the others with silver hair that fell to her waist and skin that glowed like moonlight. She wore a flowing dress that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and on her head sat a crown of crystal and silver. The human group walked forward, their footsteps echoing in the huge space. Vallani courtiers lined both sides of the room, all watching with interest. Ambassador Mirai had briefed them on the proper way to greet the Queen. They would stop 10 feet from the throne, bow, and wait to be spoken to. They reached the proper distance and stopped. Ambassador Mirai bowed first, then the rest of the team followed. Jinho lowered his head respectfully, just as they had practiced. When he looked up, he found the Queen staring directly at him. Her star-filled eyes were wide with what looked like shock. Her face had gone pale, and her hands gripped the arms of her throne so tight her knuckles were white. "No," she whispered, so softly Jinho almost didn't hear her. "It cannot be." Then, to everyone's complete shock, Queen Theranel rose from her throne and walked down the steps toward them. But instead of stopping to greet Ambassador Mirai, she walked straight to Jinho. The entire room went silent. Even the soft music stopped. The Queen stood in front of Jinho for a long moment, staring at his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then, slowly, she sank to her knees in front of him. "Forgive us, Herald of the Void," she said, her voice shaking. "We did not know you would come in such form." Jinho stared down at her in complete confusion. Around the room, Vallani courtiers were gasping and whispering to each other. He heard words like Chosen One and the Prophecy, and He has returned. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Mirai said, trying to regain control of the situation, "I think there might be some mistake." But the Queen wasn't listening to her. She was still looking up at Jinho with something that looked like fear and wonder mixed together. "There is no mistake," Queen Theranel said. "The ancient texts spoke true. He has come at last." Jinho's mind was spinning. Nothing about this made any sense. He was just a regular officer from Earth, nothing special about him at all. But somehow this alien queen seemed to think he was someone important. As if reading his thoughts, High Counselor Vethis appeared beside them carrying an ancient-looking book. The pages were made of something that wasn't quite paper, and the writing on them glowed with soft light. "Behold," Vethis said, opening the book to a page covered in strange symbols. "The Prophecy of the Void Walker." In the center of the page was a drawing that made Jinho's blood turn cold. It showed a figure in what looked like an Earth military uniform. The face in the drawing could have been his twin brother. The room was completely silent now, except for the sound of his own heartbeat in his ears. Every eye in the massive throne room was on him, waiting to see what he would do. Jinho looked down at the kneeling queen, then at the ancient book, then back at Ambassador Mirai's shocked face. He had no idea what any of this meant, but he had the feeling his life had just changed forever. 3 days had passed since the strange meeting with Queen Theranel, and Jinho felt like his world had been turned upside down. He sat in a small room on the Vallani ship, staring at pages and pages of ancient text that Dr. Hana had been helping him translate. "This is impossible," he said for the 10th time that morning. "I'm just a regular guy from Seoul. I fix broken equipment and file reports. I don't do prophecies." Dr. Hana looked up from her work. She had dark circles under her eyes from staying up all night studying the Vallani texts. "I know how you feel. But look at this." She pointed to a section of glowing writing. "It says the herald will come from the third world of the star called Seoul. That's Earth, Jinho, and it describes someone who looks exactly like you." "Lots of people look like me," Jinho said weakly. "Not according to this." Hana turned to another page. Dark hair, brown eyes, a small scar on the left hand from childhood, height of 5 feet and 8 inches, born in the year that your people call 2387. She looked at him seriously. "All of this matches you perfectly." Jinho looked down at the small scar on his left hand, the one he got when he was 7 years old and fell off his bike. How could an alien book written thousands of years ago know about that? A soft chime sounded, and Captain Choi Seokmin's voice came through the communication system. "Commander Jinho, please report to the meeting room. We've received new orders from Earth." Jinho sighed and stood up. He had been dreading this call. By now, news of what happened in the throne room had reached Earth Command. He could only imagine how they were reacting. The meeting room was small and plain compared to the beautiful Villani spaces he had seen. Ambassador Mirai was there, along with Captain Seokmin and the rest of the human team. On the main screen was Admiral Yu Dong-yuk, the head of Earth Defense Fleet. He did not look happy. "Commander Jinho," the admiral said without any greeting. "Explain to me how a routine diplomatic mission turned into whatever this is." "Sir, I honestly don't know," Jinho replied. "I've never seen these aliens before in my life. I have no idea why they think I'm important." "Well, you better figure it out fast," Admiral Yu said. "Half the politicians on Earth think this is our chance to become a major power in the galaxy. The other half think it's a trap to make us look like fools. And some think you might be working with the aliens somehow." "That's ridiculous," Ambassador Mirai said. "Commander Jinho has served with honor for 8 years. His loyalty to Earth is beyond question." "Maybe," the Admiral said, "but until we understand what's really happening, he's not leaving that alien ship. Captain Seokmin, you are to keep him under close watch. Don't let him out of your sight." Jinho felt his heart sink. They were treating him like a prisoner now, all because of something he didn't understand and couldn't control. After the meeting ended, Jinho walked back toward his room with Captain Seokmin following a few steps behind. But before they could get there, High Counselor Vethis appeared in the corridor. "Commander Jinho," Vethis said with a bow, "Her Majesty requests your presence. There is something important you must see." Captain Seokmin stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but my orders are to stay with Commander Jinho at all times." "Of course," Vethis said politely. "You are welcome to accompany us." They followed the tall alien through different corridors than before, going deeper into the ship. The walls here were older, made of dark stone instead of crystal. The air felt heavy, like they were in some kind of temple. "Where are we going?" Jinho asked. "To the Chamber of Memory," Vethis replied. "It is where we keep our most sacred relics. Her Majesty believes it is time for you to see the truth." They reached a heavy door guarded by 2 Villani soldiers. The guards bowed to Vethis and opened the door without a word. Beyond was a round room filled with soft blue light. In the center stood Queen Thyranel, but she was no longer wearing her crown and royal dress. Instead, she wore simple white robes, and her long silver hair hung loose around her shoulders. "Thank you for coming," she said to Jinho. Her voice was different here, less formal and more personal. "I know this is difficult for you. It was difficult for me, too, when I first learned the truth about the prophecy." "What truth?" Jinho asked. "Your Majesty, with respect, I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm nobody special." Queen Thyranel smiled sadly. "That is exactly what makes you special. Please, come with me." She led them to the center of the room, where a crystal device about the size of a basketball floated in the air above a metal stand. The crystal pulsed with inner light, and strange symbols moved across its surface like living things. "This is the Memory Stone," the Queen explained. "It was created by the predecessors, the ones who came before all of our races. They left it as a warning and a guide for those who would come after." "Warning about what?" Captain Seokmin asked. The Queen's face grew grave. "About the return of the consuming dark, an enemy so terrible that it devours not just planets or stars, but existence itself. The predecessors fought them long ago and won, but at a great cost. They knew the enemy would return someday." She gestured toward the floating crystal. "The Memory Stone contains their final message, but it will only activate for the one described in the prophecy, the Herald of the Void, the one who can walk between light and darkness without being consumed by either." "And you think that's me?" Jinho said. "I do not think it," Queen Thyranel replied. "I know it. Will you try? If I am wrong, nothing will happen. If I am right," she paused. "If I am right, you will see things that will change your understanding of everything." Jinho looked at the crystal, then at Captain Seokmin. His captain nodded slowly, giving him permission to try. Taking a deep breath, Jinho reached out and touched the Memory Stone. The world exploded into light and sound, and images that rushed, through his mind like a river. He saw vast cities made of materials he couldn't name, filled with beings of incredible beauty and power. He saw them fighting against something that wasn't quite darkness and wasn't quite nothing, but somehow was both at the same time. The visions showed him the final battle, where the predecessors sacrificed themselves to push the enemy back into the spaces between realities. But even as they won, their leader spoke a final prophecy. The dark will return when the stars are right, but hope will come from an unlikely place. From the third world of a young star, a herald will rise, one who carries the void within him, but is not consumed by it. The images faded, and Jinho found himself back in the room, still touching the crystal. But now the stone was blazing with light so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. Impossible, Captain Silkman whispered. Queen Thyranel was smiling, but there were tears on her face. "Now you see," she said to Jinho. "This is why I knelt before you. Not because you are above me, but because you carry a burden that none of us can share." Jinho pulled his hand away from the crystal, and the light slowly faded. His head was spinning, with everything he had seen. Those visions, were they real? "They were memories," the Queen said. "The last thoughts of beings who gave their lives to save the galaxy. And now their enemy is returning. Our long-range sensors have detected the signs. Reality itself is beginning to weaken at the edges of known space." "How long do we have?" Captain Silkman asked, his training taking over despite the impossibility of what he had just witnessed. "Perhaps a year," Queen Thyranel replied. "Maybe less. The consuming dark grows stronger with each passing day." Jinho sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the weight of what he had learned. "So what am I supposed to do? I don't have any special powers. I can't fight something that eats reality." "You don't have to fight it alone," the Queen said gently. "The prophecy speaks of a herald, one who will gather the scattered peoples of the galaxy and unite them against the darkness. You are not meant to be a warrior, Jinho. You are meant to be a leader." "I don't know how to be a leader," Jinho said, quietly. Queen Thyranel knelt down beside his chair, no longer the distant royal figure, but something more like a friend. "Neither did I when I first became queen. Leadership is not something you are born with. It is something you choose every day when faced with impossible decisions." Captain Silkman was quiet for a long moment, then spoke. "I need to contact Admiral Yu immediately. Earth needs to know about this threat." "Yes," the Queen agreed, "and not just Earth. Every world, every species in the galaxy must be warned. The consuming dark does not care about our differences or our politics. It will devour us all equally if we do not stand together." As they prepared to leave the Chamber of Memory, Jinho looked back at the crystal one more time. The weight of destiny sat heavy on his shoulders, but he was beginning to understand that he had a choice. He could run from this responsibility, or he could face it. But as the visions had shown him, the cost of running might be everything that ever existed. "Your Majesty," he said as they reached the door, "when this is over, will you still kneel?" "When you see me?" Queen Thyranel smiled. "When this is over, Commander Jinho, I hope we will stand together as equals. That is what the predecessors would have wanted." For the first time since this all began, Jinho felt something like hope. Maybe. He didn't have to carry this burden alone after all. 2 weeks after touching the memory stone, Jinho stood in the observation deck of the Harmony, watching stars that no longer seemed friendly. Dr. Hana worked beside him, comparing readings from their instruments with data the Villani had shared. The numbers all told the same terrible story. "It's getting worse," Hana said quietly. 3 more star systems have gone dark this week. Not destroyed, not conquered, just gone, like they never existed at all. Jinho nodded, his jaw tight. Since activating the memory stone, he had been having dreams, visions of the consuming dark spreading through space like a disease, eating away at reality itself. Each night, the dreams grew more vivid and more frightening. "Any word from Earth?" he asked. "Admiral Yu is still trying to convince the World Council that this is real," Hana replied. "Half of them think it's some kind of Villani trick to make us dependent on them. They can't understand that some threats are bigger than politics." The door to the observation deck slid open, and Ambassador Mirai entered with a grim expression on her face. Jinho, we need to talk. We just received a message. From the Korth Confederation, they want to meet with you. Jinho had heard of the Korth. They were one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, a collection of warrior species that had conquered dozens of worlds. The fact that they knew about him was not good news. What do they want? He asked. To see if you're really the herald from the prophecy, Mirai said. And if you are, they want to control you. Their message was very clear. Either you come to them willingly, or they'll take you by force. Over my dead body, Captain Sokmin said as he entered the room. He had been listening from the doorway. Earth doesn't negotiate with threats. It's not that simple, Mirai replied. The Korth have over 1,000 warships. We have 12 human vessels in this entire sector of space. If they decide to take Jinho, there's not much we can do to stop them. Jinho felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders again. Everything had become about him, and people were going to die because of it. Maybe I should go, he said quietly, if it keeps everyone else safe. Absolutely not, said a new voice from the doorway. Queen Thyranel entered, no longer in her royal robes but wearing practical clothes suitable for a working ship. She had been spending most of her time on the Harmony, helping them understand the ancient texts and prepare for what was coming. Your Majesty, Captain Siokman said, bowing slightly. Please, just Thyra, she said. We are all equals in this fight. She turned to Jinho. The Korth do not understand what the Herald truly is. They think you are a weapon they can point at their enemies. But the prophecy is clear. The Herald cannot be controlled or commanded. You must choose your own path. What if I choose wrong? Jinho asked. What if I make things worse? Thyra placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Then we face the consequences together. But hiding from your destiny helps no one. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from the communication system. Dr. Hana rushed to answer it, her face going pale as she listened. What is it? Ambassador Mirai asked. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching, Hana said, her voice shaking. Over 300 ships, all flying Korth battle flags. Captain Siokman was already moving toward the bridge. Battle stations, prepare for combat. Wait, Thera said, raising her hand. There may be another way. She turned to Jinho. The memory stone showed you visions of the past, but it can do more than that. It can also show the present and glimpses of possible futures. If you touch it again, you might be able to see what the Korth truly intend. Jinho hesitated. The first time he had touched the crystal, the visions had been overwhelming. He wasn't sure he was ready to experience that again. I'll be with you, Thyra said gently. My people have ways to share the burden of the stone's visions. You won't have to face it alone. 20 minutes later, they were back in the chamber of memory. This time Jinho's sister Yuna was with them. She had insisted on coming despite the danger. Are you sure about this? Yuna asked as they approached the floating crystal. She was the ship's psychologist, and she was worried about what these visions might do to her brother's mind. No, Jinho admitted, but I'm more sure about this than I am about fighting 300 warships. He reached out and touched the memory stone again. This time, Thyra placed her hand over his, and immediately the visions were different. Instead of the chaotic rush of images from before, the knowledge flowed into his mind in a more organized way. He saw the Korth fleet approaching, led by General Rakthon, a massive reptilian being covered in battle scars. The general was convinced that the Herald was either a powerful weapon or a dangerous fraud. He had no interest in prophecies or ancient warnings. All he cared about was power. But behind the general's fleet came something else. Ships that belonged to other species, all, drawn by rumors of the Herald's return. Some came seeking guidance. Others came seeking to profit from the chaos. And in the dark spaces between the stars, something else stirred. Something that fed on conflict and fear. The visions shifted, showing him possible futures. In one, he surrendered to the Korth and became their prisoner. The galaxy fell into civil war as different factions fought over him, and the consuming dark grew stronger, feeding on the chaos. In another, he fled and hid, but without the Herald to unite them, the scattered peoples of the galaxy fell one by one to the ancient enemy. But there was a third path, harder to see but definitely there. A future where he stood not as a prisoner or a fugitive, but as a leader who brought different species together not through force, but through choice. The visions faded, and Jinho opened his eyes to find everyone staring at him with concern. Blood was trickling from his nose and his hands were shaking. "What did you see?" Thyra asked gently. "I saw what happens if we keep fighting each other instead of the real enemy," Jinho said, wiping away the blood. "The consuming dark doesn't care about our politics or our wars. It just waits for us to weaken ourselves, then it moves in." "So, what do we do?" Captain Shulkman asked. "The Korth fleet will be here in 6 hours." Jinho was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything he had seen. Then he made his decision. "We meet with them," he said, "but not as prisoners or enemies. We meet as representatives of every free species in the galaxy. Thyra, can your people contact the Ethereal Collective and anyone else who might listen?" "It will take time to reach them all," Thyra said. "Then we buy time," Jinho replied. He turned to Captain Siokman. "Send a message to General Rakthon. Tell him the Herald will meet with him, but only if he comes, in peace. And tell him to bring representatives from every major power in this sector. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." "Jinho," Yuna said quietly, "are you sure you're ready for this? You're talking about becoming exactly what that prophecy says you are." "I'm not becoming anything," Jinho said, standing up straighter. "I'm choosing to act. There's a difference." Ambassador Murray nodded approvingly. "What do you need from us?" "Help," Jinho said simply. "I can't do this alone, and I don't want to. The prophecy talks about a herald, but heralds don't rule. They announce. They bring people together." He looked around the room at his friends and allies. "Will you help me bring the galaxy together?" "Of course," Thyra said immediately. "Earth stands with you," Captain Siokman added. "Always," Yuna said, taking her brother's hand. Dr. Hana was already working on her portable computer. "I'll start preparing briefings on the consuming dark. If we're going to convince other species to work together, they need to understand what we're really facing." Over the next few hours, messages went out across the galaxy. The response was better than Jinho had dared to hope. The Ethereal Collective agreed to send representatives. Several smaller species offered their support. Even some members of the Korth Confederation seemed interested in hearing what the Herald had to say. As the various fleets began arriving in the system, Jinho stood once again in the observation deck, watching the stars. But this time they didn't seem so unfriendly. Each point of light represented someone who had chosen to come, someone who was willing to listen. "Nervous?" Thyra asked, joining him at the window. "Terrified," Jinho admitted. "What if I say the wrong thing? What if I can't convince them?" "Then we'll deal with whatever happens next," Thyra said. "But I think you're underestimating yourself. The prophecy chose you for a reason." "The prophecy didn't choose me," Jinho said quietly. "I chose to accept what it asked of me. There's a difference." Thyra smiled. "That difference is exactly why you're the right person for this job." As the first diplomatic shuttles began launching, from the various fleets, Jinho took a deep breath and prepared to meet his destiny. Not as a prisoner or a weapon, but as someone who had chosen to stand up and lead when leadership was needed most. The real test was just beginning. The great meeting hall on the Vellani ship had been transformed into something that had never existed before in galactic history. Representatives from 12 different species sat around a circular table, each group eyeing the others with mixtures of curiosity, suspicion, and hope. At the center of it all sat Jinho, no longer wearing his Earth military uniform, but simple clothes that marked him as belonging to no single world. General Rakthon of the Korth Confederation dominated one section of the table. The massive reptilian warrior was covered in scars from 100 battles, and his yellow eyes never stopped moving, always watching for threats. Beside him sat his aide, Colonel Kim Taehyung, one of the few humans who had joined the Korth military years before first contact. "This is waste of time," Rakthon growled in his deep, rumbling voice. "We should be preparing for war, not sitting around talking." "War against what?" asked Ethereal Collective Representative Shimmer of Stars, a being of pure energy contained within a crystal suit. Your instruments have confirmed what ours have detected. Entire systems are simply vanishing. How do you fight an enemy that erases its targets from existence? We find way, Rakthon insisted. Korth always find way. Jinho had been listening to arguments like this for 3 days. Each species had their own ideas about how to handle the crisis, and most of those ideas involved fighting. The problem was that the consuming dark wasn't something you could shoot at or bomb into submission. General Rakthon, Jinho said quietly, and the room fell silent. Even after days of meetings, his voice still commanded attention. May I ask you something? The Korth general's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. In all your battles, have you ever fought an enemy that got stronger every time you attacked it? Of course not, Rakthon snorted. That would be impossible. The consuming dark feeds on conflict, Jinho explained patiently. The more we fight among ourselves, the stronger it becomes. The memory stone showed me this clearly. Every war, every battle, every act of violence creates cracks in reality that it can use to enter our universe. So you suggest we do nothing? Asked Ambassador Korth of the Hegemony, a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms. Let this thing devour the galaxy without resistance? I suggest we resist it the right way, Jinho said. He stood up and walked to the center of the table, where a holographic display showed their part of the galaxy. Red dots marked the systems that had already been consumed. Look at the pattern. It's not random. The dark attacks places where there's conflict first. Systems at war, planets in civil unrest, regions where different species are fighting. Dr. Hana, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. Our analysis confirms this. Every system that's been consumed was experiencing some form of violent conflict when it disappeared. Coincidence, General Rakthon muttered, but he didn't sound as certain as before. Queen Thyra, who had been serving as a mediator, leaned forward. What are you proposing, Jinho? A new kind of alliance, Jinho said. Not based on conquest or fear, but on mutual protection. We share our knowledge, our resources, our strengths. Where one species is weak, others can help. Where conflicts arise, we work together to solve them peacefully. Pretty words, said Captain Voss of the Free Traders, a scarred woman with mechanical implants covering half her face. But what happens when our interests conflict? When there's not enough resources to go around? It was Colonel Tae-hyung who answered. Then we find solutions that work for everyone, or we all die separately. General Rakthon turned to stare at his aide. Explain. Tae-hyung stood up, his human features calm despite being surrounded by beings who could crush him without thinking. General, I've served with the Korth for 5 years. I've seen what happens when species try to solve problems through force alone. Sometimes it works short-term, but it always creates new problems later. And humans think they have better way? Rakthon asked. Humans think differently, Jinho said. We adapt. We change. We find solutions that nobody else thinks of. He looked around the table. But we can't do this alone. None of us can. The next few hours were some of the hardest of Jinho's life. Each species had valid concerns about working with their traditional enemies. The Korth worried about appearing weak. The ethereals feared that physical beings would contaminate their pure energy forms. The Free Traders want. 6 months after the first encounter with the consuming dark, Jinho stood in the new Galactic Defense Center orbiting the moon of Sanctuary Prime. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species working together to build something that had never existed before, a truly united galaxy. Still feels strange, doesn't it? Asked his sister Yuna as she joined him at the window. She now served as the head of psychological services for the Defense Corps, helping different species learn to work together. Everything feels strange these days, Jinho replied with a tired smile. Sometimes I wake up and forget that I'm supposed to be the Herald of the Void. I still feel like just a guy from Seoul who got in way over his head. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needed, Yuna said. Someone who didn't think he was special. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communication system. Dr. Hana's voice came through, tense with worry. Jinho, you need to get to the sensor room immediately. We're detecting massive distortions near the edge of the Vega system. Jinho's blood went cold. They had hoped that their encounter with the consuming dark 6 months ago had solved the problem permanently. But apparently, there were more of them out there. The sensor room was filled with representatives from the allied species, all studying the holographic displays with growing concern. General Rakthon was there, along with Colonel Tai Hyung and several other Korth officers. Queen Thyra stood beside them, her face pale with worry. Even Shimmer of Stars had manifested a physical form to attend the meeting. "How bad is it?" Jinho asked as he entered the room. "Worse than before," Dr. Hana replied, pointing to the main display. "This isn't just one group of the dark entities. Our sensors are detecting at least 12 separate clusters, all moving toward inhabited systems." "Can we communicate with them like we did before?" Queen Thyra asked. "We've tried," Hana said. "But these seem different, more aggressive, less interested in listening." General Rakthon slammed his fist on the table. "Then we fight them. Allied fleet is ready. We have new weapons, new tactics." "With respect, General," Jinho said carefully, "fighting them is exactly what didn't work the first time. We only succeeded when we stopped trying to destroy them and started trying to understand them." "But these ones are different," protested Captain Voss, who had become the Free Traders' official representative to the Alliance. "They're not responding to communication attempts." Jinho studied the sensor readings, remembering everything the Memory Stone had shown him about the consuming dark. There had to be something they were missing. "Dr. Hana," he said suddenly, "can you compare the energy signatures of these new entities with the ones we encountered before?" Hana's fingers flew over her controls. After a few moments, she looked up with a shocked expression. "They're not the same species at all. These entities, they're artificial. Someone created them." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the consuming dark entities attacking now were artificial, that meant someone was using them as weapons. "Who would do such a thing?" Shimmer of Stars asked, its energy form flickering with distress. "Someone who wants to see the galaxy tear itself apart," Jinho said grimly. "Dr. Hana, can you trace where these artificial entities originated?" More analysis followed, and the answer that emerged was disturbing. The artificial dark entities had been launched from a system at the very edge of known space, a region that had been abandoned for centuries. "I know that system," Elder Kresh of the Stonewalkers said in his slow, deep voice. "My people have legends about it. It was once home to a species called the Shapers. They were obsessed with controlling other races, bending them to their will." "What happened to them?" Colonel Taehyung asked. "They vanished during the first consuming dark crisis, thousands of years ago," Elder Kresh replied. "We assumed they had been devoured like so many others, but perhaps they found a way to survive." Jinho felt pieces clicking together in his mind. "They've been watching us, waiting to see how we would handle the real dark entities. And when we succeeded in making peace with them, they decided to create their own version that they could control." "So, what do we do?" General Rakthon asked. "Attack their base directly?" "No," Jinho said firmly. "That's what they want. They want us to abandon our alliance and go back to fighting. If we attack them with military force, we prove that our new way of doing things doesn't work." Queen Thyra nodded in understanding. "You're suggesting we use diplomacy instead?" "I'm suggesting we use everything we've learned," Jinho replied. "We approach them not as conquerors, but as representatives of a united galaxy. We offer them the same choice we offer everyone: join us in building something better, or face the consequences of continuing the old ways." "And if they refuse?" Captain Voss asked. "Then we defend ourselves," Jinho said. "But we do it together, as allies. We don't let them divide us." The next few days were a test of everything they had built over the past 6 months. The artificial dark entities continued their attacks, consuming 3 uninhabited systems before the Allied fleet could intercept them. But instead of falling apart under pressure, the alliance grew stronger. Species that had never trusted each other began sharing their most advanced technologies. The Korth provided military protection for ethereal research stations. The Free Traders used their trade networks to coordinate supply lines across the galaxy. Human adaptability helped different species work together in ways they had never imagined. When the Allied fleet finally reached the Shaper home system, they found something that shocked everyone. The Shapers had indeed survived the original Dark Crisis, but they had paid a terrible price. Their entire civilization was trapped inside artificial reality generators, living in a simulated universe while their physical bodies wasted away. They're afraid, Jinho realized as he studied the sensor readings. They've been hiding here for thousands of years because they're too scared to face the real universe again. The revelation changed everything. Instead of attacking the Shaper installations, Jinho did something unexpected. He opened a direct communication channel and spoke to them as the Herald of the Void, but also as someone who understood fear. "I know what it's like to be afraid," he told them. 6 months ago, I was terrified of the responsibility that had been placed on me. I wanted to run away and hide, but I learned something important. Running away only makes the fear stronger. The Shaper response was immediate and angry. "You know nothing of our suffering. We have seen what the galaxy becomes when species are allowed to follow their natural instincts. War, destruction, chaos. We sought to prevent that by controlling the variables." "But control through force doesn't work," Jinho replied patiently. "It just creates different problems. Look at what you've become. You're so afraid of the universe that you've trapped yourselves in a prison of your own making." "Better to be safe than sorry," the Shapers replied. "Is it?" Jinho asked. "Are you really safe? Are you really alive? When was the last time any of you experienced something new? When did you last create something beautiful, or help someone in need, or feel the joy of accomplishment?" The communication channel went quiet for a long time. When it reopened, the voice that spoke was different. Younger. Less certain. "What are you offering?" this new voice asked. "The same thing we offer everyone," Jinho said. "A chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. To help build a galaxy where different species work together instead of trying to control each other. And if we refuse, then you stay in your prison and the galaxy moves on without you," Jinho said honestly. "But you're artificial dark entities. Stop attacking innocent people. That's not negotiable." What followed was the longest diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. It took 3 weeks of careful discussion, with representatives from every allied species participating. The Shapers were gradually convinced to emerge from their artificial reality, but only with guarantees that they would be protected and given a chance to contribute positively to galactic society. In the end, the Shapers became some of the Alliance's most valuable members. Their knowledge of artificial reality and advanced technology helped solve problems that had seemed impossible. More importantly, their transformation from controllers to contributors became a symbol of what the new galaxy could achieve. A year later, Jinho stood once again in the observation deck of the Harmony, but this time he wasn't alone. Queen Thyra was there, along with General Rakthon, Dr. Hannah, and representatives from dozens of other species. They were watching the construction of the first permanent Galactic Council building, a massive space station where every species would have an equal voice. "Do you think it will last?" Queen Thyra asked. "Nothing lasts forever," Jinho replied. "But maybe it will last long enough for the next generation to build something even better." "The prophecy said you would unite the galaxy," General Rakthon observed. "Mission accomplished." Jinho smiled. "The prophecy said I would herald a new age. The uniting part, we all did together." He looked around at his friends and allies. "That's what makes it real. It's not about one person saving everyone. It's about everyone choosing to save each other." As if to prove his point, alarms began, sounding softly throughout the ship. But these weren't emergency alarms. They were celebration signals.